Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Malicious Compliance. In today's episode, you can't continue working from home because you go idle in chat too often. Management thought they didn't need me, turns out they decided to try and sue me. I haven't had a sick day in 9 years. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. You can't continue working from home because you go idle in chat too often. As part of the plan to return to office post-COVID, my company has done a lot of redesignating of who can permanently work from home, who can hybrid, etc. I really wanted to work from home full-time. I hate the office with a burning passion, it's distracting, it's a long commute, there's no benefit to being there, so on and so forth. I'd just rather be at home. Well, when we thought May was going to go back to office time, they started giving out the new designations. I got designated as in office full-time. It made no sense to me. I work on a team of 8 people and each of us is in a different office somewhere in the country. I've literally never been to an in-person meeting or needed to do in-person work in 3 years at this company. Every single other person on my team got designated to work from home. So I brought it up with my boss and asked to work from home. When I started at this company and lived elsewhere, I got to work from home for 4 months before I moved, and the past 14 months during COVID have been at home, so 1836 months at the company have been WFH. What I was told is that I go idle too often in chat to trust to work from home. Basically, we have a company-wide IM system that shows you as available, idle, or in a meeting. If you don't touch your keyboard for 5 minutes, you show as idle. So they've decided to use this as a measure for who is working and who isn't. The thing is, like many people in many types of jobs, I don't have shit to do for a full 8 hours every single day. The amount of work I have to do on a typical day takes 3 to 5 hours of actual attention. There simply isn't something to do all the time. My performance numbers actually went up working from home. By all objective KPI numbers, I'm a better worker at home. In fact, in the KPIs that I don't flat out lead the team in, I come in second. There isn't work to do that I'm neglecting or procrastinating. When something comes up, I simply do it until it's done or until I can't do anymore due to waiting on someone else, then stop. And I've done that method long enough that my work queue stays empty because I work to get my queue down to the point where when something comes up I can immediately address it and be done with it. But because I have other ways to spend my time in downtime instead of messing around online at my cube pretending to be working, meaning I show idle more often, I'm a worse worker apparently. I was told if it weren't for that they would let me work at home. So I wrote a 6-line PowerShell script that virtually inputs the period key every 4 minutes, that starts running every day at 8 a.m. and stops at 5 p.m. So now I literally never go idle. I do the same amount of work and still read books, watch TV, and play video games on the side. But I have a shiny green check next to my name all day. Because of COVID complications, they eventually said no going back until after Labor Day. I just had a meeting with my boss and he said over this time they've noticed I go idle a lot less than I used to, so they're changing my designation to work from home, all because of a little icon in some software. This concludes my TED Talk on why low to middle level managers are the dumbest, most useless do-nothing positions in all of corporate America. Edit: I do not need to be told to buy a mouse jiggler for the 30th time. I'm aware of what they are. This cost me no money and achieves the same thing. Why would I pay to achieve an effect I've already achieved for free? I think reading about the fact that your company actively and objectively tracks your KPIs and metrics, but instead decided to measure your productivity by your interaction with a chat program, made my brain hurt a little. Like I just got punched in the face with a little fist made of pure corporate stupidity. Right, a good manager says as long as you are getting your work done on time and accurately, I am not concerned about how you get it done. Love managers like that. Caffeine is the program I use, it hits F13 every 2 seconds. Sounds like you're describing Skype or Teams. Everyone in my office just changed the online status settings to show me as inactive when my computer has been idle for 360 minutes. Glad it worked out for you in the end, but I hope you weren't missing out on this quick fix all along, lol. Only works if your administrator hasn't restricted that setting. It is Teams, but that setting isn't available to change. Perfect execution of the process. There's a saying about this. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's something along the lines of, a metric is only useful until your employees realize that they're being graded on that metric. Once they realize this, they'll forego actual productivity in favor of boosting that metric. You get what you measure. Management 101, but people skip that day. When I was working from home, I'd pull up a blank Word doc and set something heavy on the 0 key on my keyboard. Never went idle. My job, however, would put you out of compliance if you didn't do something every 30 seconds. My boss could never figure out why my adherence was better than everyone else's, lol. I'm envisioning Homer Simpson's pink flamingo hitting his keyboard while he rests in his moo-moo. This is glorious. Well done. So well done. I saw a video of someone with an oscillating desk fan. They zip-tied the mouse wire to the fan cage and allowed the fan to pull the mouse forwards and backwards whilst they were AFK. Ours doesn't kick in if we have a PowerPoint slideshow running. So you can just start a slideshow, minimize it, and get on with work at your own pace. It will show you as presenting all day long, might not matter for some, but some people's bosses might eventually be curious about to whom and why you're presenting PowerPoint for 8 to 10 hours a day. Saw someone else's comment a while ago that playing some random shit on Spotify on mute the whole day does the trick for them. Ridiculous way to measure productivity. We switched to Teams last year from Skype. Skype would show idle if you weren't active on the computer at all after a certain time. I turned this feature off. Teams shows idle if you aren't active in Teams for a certain amount of time. All of my work is done through my inbox, Excel, and our secondary inventory program. I am always idle in Teams, especially when busy, because I don't have time to chit-chat with my coworkers. I had a coworker IM me once because Teams showed I was out of the office because I hadn't even opened it that day. I was very much there and very much working. Just too busy to use IMs. I've worked from home for 6 years, most of my coworkers do as well. Our company uses actual productivity measurements to ensure folks are working. Using idleness in a chat service is not it at all. Management thought they didn't need me, turns out they decided to try and sue me. I was reminded of this story, so I figured I'd share, but I'm going to be intentionally vague with the industry for privacy reasons. My post history won't help here, lol. Now for some context, this company wasn't new, they had been around for about a decade before I was hired, and as far as I know they're still around, but not sure how they're doing now. When I started there it was only about 60-ish employees, which 15 to 20 were just hourly wage, nobody's like me. I just had the luck of the draw that my team had for managers over my area. I was in a role that wasn't supposed to have any management elements, but turns out not long after I started, 3 out of the 4 on the management team moved on and I slowly took over some of their responsibilities. After about 6 months, I was starting to feel overworked and I went job hunting. Having listed the responsibility I had with this position got me a management role somewhere else with substantially higher pay. I even got them to let me have a month before starting because I wanted to give a longer notice than 2 weeks to be nice. After I had given my 1-month notice, they were very dismissive of me leaving and acted like it wasn't a big deal. They thought they could spread out what I did among the other management teams. They were so certain that they could handle my job description of responsibilities that they even told me in writing they didn't need a transition period or training and didn't want an exit interview. They even offered me a week early leave with pay because they just thought it was handled and that I was useless. Before that week was out, I was getting calls, texts, and emails from higher-ups in HR trying to tell me that I'm contractually obligated to help them transition and that if I didn't that they would sue me for breach of contract. Now the best part of this is that when I was hired I was simply an hourly employee with no special contract, besides the standard employee agreement for hourly workers, but since I had started doing management level work, everyone had assumed that I was made to sign the management contract, which had a clause in it that required management to work past their notice if the company requested it for handover training or anything the person was working on that couldn't be finished by anyone else. So within a week, they were frantically trying to get me to help them, and I had already started working with my new company half a week early, so I was ignoring their calls, texts, and emails because I was diving headfirst into my new role. Well, even after the threats, I thought they would have figured out that I didn't sign that contract. About another week later, I was served papers at my new office, and it shocked me honestly. I read over the paperwork and they were suing me for breach of contract, and it listed a law firm on it obviously. So I decided to call them up and ask them if they had a signed contract, and I was laughed off the phone by the law office clerk. I realize I shouldn't have called them and should have gotten my own lawyer. Just 3 days later, I received a certified letter from the law firm with an official apology for being served and had official documentation showing they dropped the lawsuit, and apparently they dropped that company as a client for unethical practices. I never got another text, call, or email from anyone at that company or law firm. It felt nice that I shut down a lawsuit with a single question. Have you considered the idea that the clerk wasn't laughing at you but instead was laughing because she knew the client had made a mistake? It's pretty clear she took you seriously because you heard back from them quickly. Good for you to use the experience you gained to get a better job. BS in their part to make assumptions that you signed a contract. You're right, conventional wisdom says you shouldn't call and talk to the other side's law firm and should get your own. But in this case, I feel like you saved yourself a lot of hassle and expense by calling them. You didn't even have to hire a lawyer. Right? Everyone is so quick to say lawyer up. But who has lawyer up money laying around? This isn't a criminal case that you can request a public defender. Kind of the same thing happened to me. I was in sales with no specific area. The state I lived in was open to me, but I stayed close to my home. A new company took us over, had me sign a non-compete. I read it and it said if I left that I wasn't allowed to solicit any customers of the company in the county of the state that my new employer was located in. 8 months later I left and my customers followed me. I received several letters that they would sue. My wife was a nervous wreck about losing our house and my income. My attorney responded with a counterclaim for emotional something. In the end, we settled with them paying me $25,000, and I wasn't allowed to take any customers in the company's county. The joke was on them. I never had any customers in their county. I didn't get sued, but during an exit interview, HR brought up that I couldn't work with a competing company because of my non-disclosure. I smiled a really big smile and asked where that non-compete was and if I could get a copy. She said she would get it to me. I acted amazed at how she was able to conjure up a document that didn't exist. She just glared at me and said the interview was over. Have a friend who was fired from his firm for budget-cutting reasons, not for cause. After he left, he got a nasty letter from the CEO threatening to sue because revenue dropped after he left. It didn't state why this was a result of any action of his. He showed it to a lawyer who laughed at it and wrote a nasty one, in legalese, threatening to sue for harassment. I assumed the original letter never was reviewed by legal and my friend never heard any more from them. I'm surprised the law firm didn't do their due diligence to ensure that there indeed was a breach of contract before filing the suit. That's the kind of behavior that could land them in hot water. Trust is a hell of a thing. They file a suit while getting the docs ready so things can move faster. They just take what the company says is true, since 99.9% of the time it is. Any breach of contract complaint would need to make specific reference to the contract in dispute, so this is just a fun pretend piece. Great to see your professionalism rewarded. They could have paid you to stay the money they threw away on attorneys trying to get revenge on you. Hey, thanks for the kind words. I appreciate your support. You know, sometimes things don't go as expected, but it's important to keep a positive mindset and move forward. Revenge isn't really my thing anyway. I'd rather focus on building bridges and finding common ground. Let's spread some good vibes, my friend. I would love to see the look on their faces when they realized they never had you sign a contract. I haven't had a sick day in 9 years. For reference, this takes place around 2017, so definitely pre-COVID. I used to work in a training center for a Fortune 500 company. When class wasn't in session, the building normally only had 4 people in it: me, trainee, the boss, and the 2 trainers. I called in sick 2 days in a row because I had some nasty lung infection. On the second day, the boss starts ranting at me about how kids these days have no discipline and I haven't taken a sick day in 9 years. I tried asking if he wanted me to get a doctor's note, but he was pretty adamant about me coming in the next day. He said that he can decide if I'm actually sick, and he can send me home. I was one of the few women working in that section of the company, less than half everyone's age, and felt like arguing with him about it was a bad idea. KQQQ Malicious Compliance. That next morning I decide to not pump myself full of cold meds and just go and raw dogging life. As soon as I walk in the door, the trainers look at me and I say, "I'm very sick, might want to give me a wide berth." They looked at me wide-eyed, nodded, and went to a different section of the building. The boss hears me coughing so hard I'm having to do that gasp for air like I just emerged from the depths. He walks in and goes, "Oh, you really are sick. You should go home." But I don't understand how you got this sick, and then reminds me, I haven't taken a sick day in 9 years. So I drive home and come back in the next day. The trainers look at me and say, "What the hell are you doing here?" Me, the boss said that if I'm actually sick, he can send me home. They laughed and avoided my section of the building. The boss once again hears me coughing and gasping for air and comes in and dismisses me, and this time tells me that he doesn't need more proof. I can come back when I feel better. 4 days later, Mr. I haven't taken a sick day in 9 years was sick with some nasty lung nonsense and was out for a week. If only he had more discipline. Tell him to come in and you can send him home if he is actually sick. And you won't get sick again because you now have immunity. Then make up something stupid to keep him there. You actually got the bastard sick XD good on you for breaking that 9-year ego streak of his. I'm just glad that the trainers took my warning seriously. They went into the shop and didn't come out, so they didn't get sick. I would have felt pretty bad then. I looked like absolute hell, so they didn't need much convincing. It has been 9 years 0 days since the boss took a sick day. I have a chronic cough, so during the height of COVID, even though I was masked, folks would give me wide berth. The one time some anti-masker was ranting, I felt a coughing fit coming on. Okay, you've convinced me they are useless. Then started hacking away, moving towards him. What? You said masks were useless? I have a spare if you want it? As he backed off and tried to hide that he was freaking out. LOL, when I first started my job that I'm at now, I got everyone sick with my crazy, bad chest cold. It wasn't COVID, thankfully, but I got some pretty mean looks. Sorry, not sorry, the company doesn't pay me to be homesick. The 8 days a year they offered me for my compound vacation /sick/appointment days isn't enough, plus I wasn't going to get the first 4 days of that for another 5 months. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.